Week 13 in the NFL saw a number of high profile injuries, as well as a number of high profile games that are going to have a major impact on the playoff race as the season winds down. Let's get right into it. This is the Sports Ball Network's Week 13 NFL breakdown. The Dallas Cowboys and the Seattle Seahawks kicked things off early in the week with an exciting Thursday night clash, which ended up in a 41-35 Dallas Cowboys victory. The Cowboys, now 9-3, were absolutely carried by their offense in this game. Dak Prescott, another fantastic performance, 299 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion, 23 yards on the ground as well. Tony Pollard, 68 yards and a touchdown on the ground. CeeDee Lamb, 12 receptions, 116 yards, and a touchdown. He was great. Jake Ferguson had 6 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. The Cowboys defense was not able to do anything against Seattle air attack in this game, but ultimately didn't matter. Dallas got the win, and at 9-3, they figure to be a very important team down the stretch for the playoff picture, especially given that the Eagles, more on them later, ended up falling later in the week. Seattle, now 6-6, finds themselves suddenly out of the playoff picture despite their performance. Geno Smith, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, as well as 6 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Zach Charbonnet filling in for the injured Kenneth Walker had an admirable day. 60 yards and a touchdown on the ground for the rookie. But this game was all about DK Metcalf. 6 receptions, 134 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the air. He just dominated Dallas all day long. But for Seattle, it was not enough. And now they are on the outside looking in, tied with several teams for the final playoff spot. Uh, could Seattle miss the playoffs this year? Possibly, if things continue to go wrong for them. But still, I ultimately think that they are a little bit more talented than teams like the Rams and the Packers who are in the playoffs. So I do think they'll end up making it. But now, given the loss, they're much more at risk than they were before. Let's kick things off Sunday with another game down in Texas, in Houston this time. The Houston Texans ended up defeating the Denver Broncos, stopping their winning streak, 22-17. Houston, now 7-5, is firmly in the playoff race, led by excellent rookie quarterback CJ Stroud. Stroud had 274 yards and a touchdown. Dameon Pierce, still coming back from injury, 41 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Nico Collins, 191 yards on 9 receptions, as well as a touchdown. He just torched Denver all day long. But he's not the wide receiver we need to talk about right now for Houston. Rookie Tank Dell fractured his fibula. He's on IR. His season's done. He had an amazing rookie season, 709 yards, 7 touchdowns on 47 receptions. Hopefully he has a great recovery. And this is bad for Houston. They lost a dynamic playmaker who was helping them really perform this season. And if the guys around CJ Stroud can't step up like Tank Dell has, this team could be at risk for a slide to end the year. Of course, then again, if the team gets 3 interceptions and 3 sacks like they did this week, that's going to be a moot point. We'll see. For Denver, Russell Wilson struggled in this game. He had 186 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. Struggles carried over onto the ground as well. Javonte Williams, 46 yards on 13 carries, though Russell Wilson did have 44 and touchdown on the ground as well. Really just not a great day for Denver. Their defense had 5 sacks and a fumble, but they were not really able to stop Houston's deep pass attack. And this game kind of showed that Denver is a competitive team, but they maybe are not going to be a playoff level team this year. Still, they are building off of the momentum they had earlier in the season. They were competitive throughout this game, and should be fun to watch them down the stretch. I'm going to take a moment to kind of put into context just how bad this New England Patriots team is right now. Bill Belichick held Justin Herbert to 212 yards in the air, held Los Angeles total to under 250 yards on offense. This is a Los Angeles offense with Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen, by the way. And yet the Patriots lost. The Chargers scored 6 points in a game, and the Patriots lost because they could not score. New England, 2-10, just could not do anything on offense. Bailey Zappi, 141 yards, 16 yards on the ground. Ezekiel Elliott, 52 yards on the ground, 4 receptions, 40 yards. He was like the lone bright spot here. Ramondre Stevenson's hurt. He's going to be out a couple weeks here. Not good. Conte Parker, okay game in the air, 4 receptions, 64 yards. The defense, of course, did not allow any points despite not having a single sack, a single interception, or a single fumble. Really, that's just remarkable. That's the definition of bend don't break. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. New England did break because they could not do anything on offense. Hopefully, the Patriots will draft a quarterback next year, which will help put them on the road to recovery here. But it's really just unbelievable how badly this season has gone in New England. Los Angeles at 5-7, like I said before, was not really good on offense. They ran into the best defensive coach and the best coach of all time, who schemed up an absolutely foolproof game plan. Just the fact that Los Angeles won this game was more on the Patriots being terrible on offense than Los Angeles being a good team. Los Angeles defense, though, a lot of highlights: 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery. Obviously, did not allow New England to score. Just a masterclass performance by them as well. Still, this is not a great Los Angeles Chargers team, even though they are still alive at 5-7. And I fully expect them to lose next week against a very, very frisky Denver team. The Detroit Lions got back on track following that embarrassing home loss in Thanksgiving. No more waxing gibbous moons to hold them back. Detroit won 33-28, moving to 9-3 on the season over the New Orleans Saints. Jared Goff, 213 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air. He was efficient. David Montgomery, 56 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Jahmyr Gibbs, 60 yards on the ground. Just Detroit Lions rushing offense was on point all day. Amon-Ra St. Brown, only 2 receptions in this game for 49 yards and a touchdown. A very un-Amon-Ra St. Brown like performance from him. I expect him to bounce back though. Bulk of the passing work here went to Sam Laporta. 9 receptions, 140 yards and a touchdown. He went ballistic against the Saints defense. Lions defense, interception, 2 sacks, fumble. Just a good bounce back game by Detroit, who is now within striking distance of the number 1 seed. The New Orleans Saints struggled in this game. Derek Carr, 226 yards, a touchdown, an interception, and a fumble. Jameis Winston got in at one point. Derek Carr is hurt. It seems like he's hurt every week. He's absolutely getting beaten up behind his line. His status is in question. Alvin Kamara, though, was fantastic. 51 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions, 58 yards. He has been dynamic all season. He is back. Chris Olave, 5 receptions for 119 yards. He continues to perform. Taysom Hill, 59 yards and touchdown on the ground, 2 receptions, 15 yards. Continues to be a dynamic weapon for this Saints team. Defense, though, was not able to generate anything, only a single sack. And that is why New Orleans lost this game. And that is why Detroit was able to score 21 points in the first quarter within like 6 minutes of the game starting. So, for people who are questioning why a Saints team that is as talented as this one is at 5-7 and in second place in their division, that's why. Defense is not up to par, and if the Saints want to get back in playoff contention, that unit needs to turn it around and fast. It's hard to believe that there was a game on Sunday that was worse than Chargers Patriots, but Falcons Jets just might be it. The Falcons moved to 6-6 on the season and somehow still remain in first place in the NFC South, winning 13-8. This game was just not fun to watch for a large chunk of it. It was 2-0 was the score. Uh, Jets defense had a safety. That's why the score was like that for quite some time. Also forced a fumble, 3 sacks. But the Jets defense was never the problem with this team. It was the offense. Tim Boyle, 148 yards and an interception. He was not very good. In fact, the team thought he was so bad that they cut him following this game. Trevor Siemian comes in 5 out of 13 for 66 yards through the air in that lost fumble. Just terrible play by the Jets offense. Breece Hall, only 16 yards on the ground, 29 through the air on 6 receptions. Garrett Wilson, 3 receptions, 50 yards. This is a bad Jets team, and I know a lot of people came in with playoff expectations for this team. I did too, but through the course of this season, it's become apparent that this team was more than just an Aaron Rodgers away. There are issues on the offensive line, issues with the pass catchers, and issues with coaching that need to be resolved before the Jets can start to really think about competing here. For Atlanta, a team which is competitive, Desmond Ritter threw for 121 yards and a touchdown in the air. He was not very good, but he did enough to win. Bijan Robinson, 53 yards on the ground, 3 receptions for 26 yards. Bijan is dynamic. He is starting to get a lot of work now, which is good. And if the Falcons want to keep winning, they'll continue to do that. Drake London, 1 reception for 8 yards. Seems like it was his turn to be phased out of the offensive game plan. Kyle Pitts, 4 receptions for 51 yards. A little bit of an emergence from him. And the defense, interception, 4 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 2 of which they recovered. Just great performance by that unit against a bad Jets team. But that was to be expected. Atlanta is on top of the NFC South and right now would be the 4 seed hosting the Dallas Cowboys. I don't expect them to be on top of this division by the end of the season, but at this point, who knows? The Saints seem to find inventive ways to lose every week, and Tampa just has not done enough this season to convince me that they could overtake this team. So, until further notice, and unless things drastically change, it's going to be Atlanta who is the team to beat in this division. In the most surprising game of the week, it was the Arizona Cardinals who ended up running over the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-10. Pittsburgh, in a game that many thought they could have won, had a chance to really pull ahead in the wild card race, but instead they now find themselves tied with several teams in that final wild card spot at 7-5. The offense, after putting up a historically good performance for Pittsburgh against Cincinnati last week, regressed. Mitchell Trubisky had to come in because Kenny Pickett had an injury that's sidelining him. Just a terrible week for Pittsburgh. They're going to want to shake this off if they want to remain competitive here in the playoff race. Nothing really went right for this team, not even for the defense, which only had 2 sacks and a forced fumble. So just a bad week for the Steelers. And if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive in a tight AFC with frisky teams like the Colts and the Texans, they're going to have to bounce back quickly. Arizona at 3-10 is continuing to show that there are no pushovers. Kyler Murray, 145 yards in the air and a touchdown. He was relatively efficient. James Conner took over on the ground in a Pittsburgh homecoming, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns on 25 carries. He was great. Trey McBride, dominant at tight end, 8 receptions, 89 yards and a touchdown. He is quickly becoming a top tight end in the league. He is developing as many people hoped in his second year. And I'm very excited to see what he does with another year under his belt come 2024. Arizona Cardinals defense played heroically. They had a fumble recovery and only allowed 10 points to a Pittsburgh team that is still in the playoffs as of now. And overall, this was just a great team effort and a culture building win for the Cardinals, which will serve them well moving forward. Despite a plethora of injuries, the Indianapolis Colts continue to keep their playoff hopes well and alive, moving to 7-5 with an overtime victory over the division rival Tennessee Titans, 31-28. Gardner Minshew continues to lead the Colts admirably, 312 yards and 2 touchdowns in the air. He did lose a fumble on the ground, but he was phenomenal. Zach Moss filling in for the injured Jonathan Taylor had 19 carries for 51 yards. I expect him to increase his efficiency as he gets readjusted back into the bell cow role. Michael Pittman was great, 11 receptions, 105 yards and a touchdown through the air. Alec Pierce, 3 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. He was an X factor in this game. Kylan Granson, 3 receptions, 72 yards, tight end position. Just a great day for the Indianapolis offense. The defense had 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 of which they recovered, a touchdown, and a blocked field goal. They did enough to win this game for the team when it mattered most. And as of now, Indianapolis is tied with a bunch of other teams for those final playoff spots in the AFC. They should continue to be a factor as the season winds down. And I fully expect them to potentially make a playoff push at the end of the season once they get Jonathan Taylor back healthy. Will Levis for the Titans did enough to win this game. Unfortunately, they just were not able to do it, but he had 224 yards in the air and a touchdown. Nice bounce back week for him after a couple weeks of struggles. Derrick Henry continued to round back into form following last week's performance, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns on 21 carries. DeAndre Hopkins, 5 receptions, 75 yards, and a touchdown in the air. Okonkwo at tight end, 3 receptions, 62 yards. And the defense, 3 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries. Uh, this was a good game by Tennessee. They are building momentum with a team that is in a bit of a rebuilding phase with a rookie quarterback. And although they weren't able to win, the fact that they were competing in this game shows me that if they add the right pieces in free agency next year, if they draft well, they absolutely will be a factor in the AFC come 2024. The Miami Dolphins did what everybody expected them to do, dominating the Washington Commanders 45-15, moving to the #1 seed in the AFC. Tua was efficient, 280 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Devon Achane, 73 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He was great. He continues to have a phenomenal rookie season. Tyreek Hill, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is on track to exceed 2,000 yards receiving. He should be in the MVP conversation, I think. The defense, an interception, 3 sacks, forced fumble, touchdown. Just great performance by them and a great performance all around by a Miami team, which continues to exceed my expectations for the season and is now in position to have the AFC playoff picture run through South Beach. Washington, meanwhile, falling to 4-9, continues to struggle on offense. Sam Howell, only 127 yards in the air and an interception. He did have a 2-point conversion throw as well. 21 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, though. It's funny. Howell has struggled these past couple weeks, and a lot of people are questioning whether or not he's the answer for Washington. But he is second in the league in passing yards, even with the poor performances he's put up the past 2 weeks. Kid's having a great season. It's unfortunate that Washington is not able to take advantage of it. Antonio Gibson, only 35 yards on the ground after Brian Robinson went down with an injury. Curtis Samuel led the way in receiving 4 receptions, 65 yards. Just a bad day for Washington. Nothing on defense. This team is likely going to end up with a top 5 pick, which they absolutely need to rebuild this roster. And at the end of the season, once everything is said and done, I fully expect Ron Rivera to be out, possibly the general manager of Washington to be out, and the team to go in a different direction with new decision makers who will end up making that selection. Kicking things off in the afternoon, it was Tampa Bay that ended up getting the better of Carolina in the NFC South showdown, winning 21-18. Tampa Bay moves to 5-7 on the season. They are still competitive for the division, even if they have not shown enough right now to make me believe that they are going to end up on top. Baker Mayfield, 202 yards, a touchdown and interception in the air. Shad White, 84 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 3 receptions, 22 yards. Mike Evans continues his amazing play, 7 receptions, 162 yards and a touchdown. The defense, an interception, 4 sacks. Tampa Bay beat up on a bad Carolina team, but this was to be expected. They are still alive for the division, but even in this game where they ended up winning pretty comfortably, I did not see a lot that indicated to me that they are competitive outside of the fact that the NFC South is just a really bad division. Carolina Panthers moved to 1-11. Just they are not good. Bryce Young continues to struggle, 178 yards and an interception in the air. He had a 2-point conversion throw as well. Chuba Hubbard, though, 104 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He was great. Miles Sanders, on the other hand, was not. 23 yards on 8 carries. It looks like he's being phased out of the offense, which is unfortunate given that Carolina gave him a huge contract into the off season. Interesting to see what happens in this Carolina backfield after the season ends. Jonathan Mingo had a decent performance, 6 receptions for 69 yards. Good to see the rookie starting to get a little bit more work and a little bit more looks in this offense, showing what he can do. And the defense, an interception and a sack, not much else. Carolina's just not a good team. At this rate, they are going to end up with the worst record in the league, which means the Bears are going to get the number 1 pick in the draft. Just Carolina does not have a lot to work with right now. Given the trades that they made, they're probably not going to have a lot to work with in 2024. And because of that, I fully expect these struggles to continue, not only for this year, but into next year as well. This game was over, I would say, by the end of the third quarter. San Francisco ran away from the Philadelphia Eagles by the fourth quarter, absolutely beating them up 42-19 in the NFC Championship game rematch. San Francisco moves to 9-3. There's really not much to say here. They were just fantastic. Brock Purdy, 314 yards, 4 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey, 93 yards. I believe a touchdown as well. Deebo Samuel, 22 yards and a touchdown on the ground. 4 receptions, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was untackleable. Ran 95 receptions, 46 yards and a touchdown. George Kittle also got in on it. 4 receptions, 68 yards. The San Francisco defense, 3 sacks. Just everything was working for San Francisco here. They absolutely have a chance to get the number one seed in the NFC. Just a great game by them. Philadelphia Eagles, just a shameful performance. Jalen Hurts was all right, 298 yards and a touchdown, 20 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He had an injury scare, but he ended up okay. This was a bad game by the Eagles. 2 carries for 5 yards for Kenneth Gainwell. DeAndre Swift, 6 carries, 13 yards on the ground. They were not able to get anything going on the ground. Devonta Smith did have 96 yards and a touchdown on 9 receptions. A.J. Brown, 8 receptions for 114 yards. But nothing was working here. The Eagles defense couldn't tackle. They had 2 sacks, but really they were not doing anything. Eagles offense felt off. This was just a terrible, terrible, no good game by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I hope, for my sake, as an Eagles fan, that they correct this next week against the Dallas Cowboys. There was a party in Los Angeles as the Rams moved to 500, beating up on the spiraling Cleveland Browns 36-19. Matt Stafford, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns in the air. He was his MVP level self. Fantastic performance by him. Kyren Williams, 88 yards and touchdown on the ground. He continues to be fantastic, coming back from injury. Puka Nacua breaking records. 34 yards on the ground, 4 receptions, 105 yards, and a touchdown in the air. He has exceeded 1,000 yards on his rookie season. Just a fantastic showing by him. Cooper Kupp, 6 receptions, 39 yards, and a touchdown. He's coming back from injury. He's doing okay. Defense, an interception, 2 sacks, and a safety. Just were swarming Cleveland all day long. Great performance by the Rams. They are firmly in the playoff picture now, tied with Seattle, Green Bay, and Minnesota at 6-6. And I would not be surprised if by the end of the season, we're talking about the Los Angeles Rams going to potentially play their division rivals in wildcard weekends. And if the team continues to play like this, perhaps they could steal that game too. Cleveland falling to 7-5 is still very much in the AFC playoff race, but they have faded over the past couple weeks. And it seems like the injuries are finally catching up for this team. Joe Flacco, now starting at quarterback, threw for 254 yards and 2 touchdowns, interception. Jerome Ford was not able to get anything going on around 19 yards on 9 carries. He did have 3 receptions for 33 and a touchdown. Elijah Moore led the team receptions 4 for 83. Just bad game by Cleveland. Nothing on defense. Just they continue to spiral, and even though they are in the playoff picture right now, I don't expect them to hold by the end of the year. Just the injuries, everything surrounding the team just looks to be too much to overcome right now, which is unfortunate because going into the year, I had figured this was the most talented team in the AFC North. And through these first 10 weeks or so in the season, they were proving that. But now they may very well miss the dance. Sunday Night Football had an unexpected result with the Green Bay Packers improving to 6-6, beating the Kansas City Chiefs 27-19. Jordan Love, after his midseason struggles, continues to impress. 267 yards, 3 touchdowns in the air. A.J. Dillon, 73 yards on the ground. Christian Watson, 7 receptions, 71 yards, and 2 touchdowns, though he did have a hamstring injury at the end of the game that looked pretty bad. Hopefully he'll be able to recover soon. Packers defense, interception, 3 sacks, really were not letting the Chiefs do much. Green Bay over the past couple weeks might have saved their season. Right now, they are one of the playoff teams if the season ended today. They are competitive at this point. And if Jordan Love and the offense continues to emerge, they will continue to be a competitive team. Interesting tidbit that I heard on the broadcast on Sunday night. This is the youngest team in the NFL, and it really seems like they're growing into themselves. Kansas City, meanwhile, struggled in this game. Patrick Mahomes, 210 yards and touchdown, as well as an interception in the air. Isaiah Pacheco on the ground, 110 yards and a touchdown, 3 receptions, 13 yards. Isaiah Pacheco runs angry. He's a great player. Seems like he was the only thing that was working for this team, but unfortunately, he was ejected at the end of the game. He ended up punching a Packers player. That's never good to see. Going to be interested to see if the league has any sort of disciplinary action for him. Uh, G. Rice continues to emerge, 8 receptions, 64 yards. Travis Kelce did his usual thing, 4 receptions, 81 yards. And the Chiefs defense, only 2 sacks. This is a top 5 defensive unit, so it was a little bit surprising to see them unable to really generate anything against the Packers team, which has been susceptible to pressure all year. But hey, it was just an off day for Kansas City. Still in control of the AFC West. I still expect them to win their division and be a force in the playoffs. But games like this do have me question whether or not this team could repeat as Super Bowl champions this year. Monday night concluded the week with a thrilling overtime game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals ended up coming on top of this one, 34-31. Quarterback Jake Browning had an amazing game, 354 yards and a touchdown in the air. For him, 22 and a touchdown on the ground. He even had a reception, though that one, he lost 7 yards. Joe Mixon, 68 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 6 receptions, 49 yards. Jamar Chase, 11 receptions, 149 yards, and a touchdown. Just a fantastic game by the Cincinnati offense. The Bengals defense, 4 sacks and a forced fumble. Evan McPherson obviously was great, hit the game winner in overtime. Cincinnati, despite my expectations, despite the expectations of many when Joe Burrow went down, is still competitive at 6-6 for the AFC playoffs. They might not make it over teams like the Texans or the Steelers, but at this point they factor to be a frisky team down the stretch, and they could end up playing spoiler. Or perhaps, if things go right, they could end up making the playoffs. Who knows? For Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence was pretty good in this game, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air, 8 yards and touchdown on the ground, though he did have a high ankle sprain at the end of the game. A lot of people were worried that this could be an Achilles or an ACL injury. Got pretty good news that it was a high ankle sprain. He's week to week now. Travis Etienne, 45 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 4 receptions, 34 yards in the air. He was great after a little bit of a down stretch. It was Parker Washington who led Jacksonville in receiving, 6 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown. He was great. Christian Kirk went down with an injury on this team. He needs surgery. His season's likely done for the foreseeable future. Very unfortunate. Evan Ingram, 9 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. The tight end position. He was also great. Jaguars defense interception, 2 sacks, but ultimately not enough for this team. Jacksonville is only a game ahead of Houston and Indianapolis in a very competitive AFC South. So at this point, moving forward, they really can't afford to slip and drop another game. Of course, with Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk potentially out, they could be turning to CJ Beathard to lead them to the playoffs for the foreseeable future. Going to be interesting to see what happens with this team and what happens with the playoff field as a result of this game. Perhaps in a few weeks, if things go wrong for Jacksonville, we might be talking about them as if they are on the outside looking in. Then again, if Trevor Lawrence comes back earlier than expected from his ankle injury, or if the team is able to perform in the meanwhile, that will be a mute point. But still, it's definitely a storyline to watch as the season concludes. Thank you so much for watching this week's NFL breakdown. If you liked what you saw, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.